All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call this special meeting of council to order. This is our community's house. We're all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Michael, Mayor of the District of North Vancouver. So the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all here to this special meeting of council for Tuesday, February 17th. I will just say special meeting of council only means that it was added at a later time. So in December, we set out the calendar throughout the course of the year. And if we make adjustments to dates, those become specials rather than regulars. So this is just an added meeting that we've added to our calendar since the calendar was set back in December. That's what makes it special. And also, of course, your presentation tonight. We're looking forward to that. Before we get going, Councillor Pope, would you be willing to do our land acknowledgement?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We respectfully acknowledge the original peoples of these lands and waters, specifically the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam, on whose unceded ancestral lands the District of North Vancouver is located. We value the opportunity to learn, share, and serve our community on these unceded lands.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pope. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Any errors or omissions from the agenda is presented? Hearing none. Moved by Councillor Forbes, second by Councillor Mott. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. And I don't believe we have minutes circulating with this package. We cleared up our special meeting minutes at the last meeting. We do, because we're treating this as though it is a regular meeting of council, we do actually have a period of up to 30 minutes at the front end of the meeting for input from the public. Members of the public can speak about pretty much almost any topic they would like to for a period of up to 3 minutes at the front of the meeting. At this point, we have nobody that's signed up to speak ahead of time. And so I'm just going to look to our virtual list, and here in the room, would anybody like to address council at the front end of the meeting? We're going to move Corey Cost over to the panel, so we will have a virtual participant on. Welcome, Corey Cost. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Your Worship. Nice.
Well, I can hear you clearly, but I'm going to get you to speak up just a touch louder.
Okay.
And then welcome. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay. I should be able to get this under 1 minute. I'm certainly quite impressed by the item 3.2, in which the Councillor Catherine Pope made a good resolution, which I think is a good idea. And it certainly is in accordance with the Deloitte report on the board governance review as well, which took place May the 20th of 2025. So I wholeheartedly recommend that council approve this item, which is filled with all sorts of different aspects and collects it all neatly into one reference area. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for your comments, Corey Cost. The next speaker I have joining us virtually is Eric Jensen. Eric Jensen, can you hear me? Let's see if he's on. You are muted at the moment, but you are over on the panel.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, quietly though. So I'm just going to ask you to speak nice and loudly into the microphone.
Is that better?
Yes, it is. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Yeah, sorry that my camera is not working. I'm not sure why it's not. Anyways, I believe that we're getting involved with the financial plan for 2026 to 2030 tonight. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I sent some notes over to you guys through the website that I received via email today, and I think there's a couple of items in there that I just want to make sure are really carefully scrutinized by council with respect to this financial plan, one of which is the concept and idea that DCCs will forever continue to roll in, given I think the idea and concept was that staff thought that with the changes to the zoning with the SHMU that we talked about last week or the week before, that we would get an influx of development. And I don't think that is going to be the case at all. And clearly the cost of construction and the ability to sell said homes is not there right now. So I think we need to be really, really careful about how much we're betting on development or DCCs coming in the door as a community. The other part of the proposal that was in there is, as staff suggests, that there are cuts that are going to need to be made, but they are apparently asking for you guys to approve this financial plan without highlighting and costing out what things they are going to be cutting in order to keep the budget on track. And so I think it's really important to make sure that we are costing things out and are going into this financial plan with our eyes wide open. So I would just respectfully hope that council will dig into some of those details, and there's a few others that are sent there, but those are the two big ones that I would really like to make sure that you guys are asking pointed questions about. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Eric Jensen. Do we have anyone else who would like to address the council meeting this evening? If you're a virtual participant, raise your virtual hand. Okay, seeing no one online or here in the chamber, I'm going to move on with this evening's agenda. So the next item up for consideration is reports from council or staff. Item 3.1, this is the 2026 to 2030 draft financial plan workbook. And we're going to start with a presentation from staff. So I'll welcome up our CFO, Rick Daniluk.
See if I can remember my password.
But while you're getting logged in, I think it is appropriate, just before we get that underway, we forgot to introduce and welcome our new CAO at last week's public meeting. And so I did just want to say welcome to Mike Fox. Thank you for coming and joining the District of North Vancouver. We look forward to working with you for a long time. I hope maybe you can give a little bit of an introduction about yourself and very briefly.
Well, evening, everybody. Is this on?
Not yet. So we got you there.
Over there.
I'll go for it.
Go. Evening, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here. I know my wife is thrilled to be here. The past weekend, we explored lots of trails that are offered on the North Shore and experienced a few of the traffic woes that we were discussing just before the meeting, actually. But on a more serious note, I come with a varied experience across several provinces and different types of municipality makeups. And I'm just really excited to dig in. The municipality has a dedicated team and a great council to work with. So looking forward to meeting all the community. If you see me out there, just give me a tap on the shoulder and have a conversation. I'm more than happy to talk with anybody at any time. And I just really look forward to working with the community and council and staff to make a positive difference.
Well, on behalf of council, welcome. I've already seen in the first little bit, you're diving in with both feet. So we're really excited to have you in position and look forward to working with you for a long time to come. As I said, welcome.
Mr. Mayor, sorry. Could we call IT? I'm not connecting as usual.
Just a Wi-Fi issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can send them a note. I'm going to get going with the presentation.
That's fine.
In-house here, but Mr. Daniluk, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Little, and good evening, council, and to members of the public listening in. On February 3rd, council directed staff to prepare the draft financial plan and introduce it to council and the public tonight. At that meeting, they also asked us to introduce the financial plan workbook a little earlier. So it was actually released last Friday and made available to the public then. The plan is based on the key strategies and adjustments that were shared at that meeting, and a property tax increase of  3.5%, including 1.5% for infrastructure. This financial plan balances today's affordability with tomorrow's responsibility. It continues to deliver the services the community needs while making modest reductions and increasing our investment in core infrastructure over time. The plan recognizes that new strategies are required to address our 10-year fiscal imbalance. And as we move forward, we'll focus on innovation, creating value for the community, fairness in our taxes and user fees, and proactive risk management. All the climate change that's being brought to bear on the municipality and all of the events that we've been experiencing, we do need to take different approaches, and we are. Over 2026 and 2027, we'll continue to improve the budget process, enhancing transparency and understanding for council and the public, and introducing new tools to help us share information. Today's presentation covers the timeline, environmental scan, highlights from the corporate plan, an overview of the financial aspects, as well as next steps in the process. Whoops. As mentioned, at Council's direction, the budget workbook was released last Friday, earlier than originally planned, to extend the public input period. The public input period will remain open until March 2nd, including an opportunity for residents to address Council directly on that date. A summary of the public's input will be provided to Council in advance of its budget deliberations meeting on March 9th, and the bylaw readings are scheduled for March 16th, with adoption planned for April 13th. As the budget must be adopted prior to the tax distribution workshop, which is scheduled for April 20th, the timeline remains tight. With that in mind, council members are encouraged to raise any budget-related questions early in the process to allow ample time to provide answers and address any questions or concerns. This plan focuses on the things that we can control while preparing us for the things that we can't. We are planning in a period of economic uncertainty, infrastructure pressures, and evolving provincial requirements for housing and other matters. Inflationary pressures continue to impact construction, labor, and supplies across the region, and our financial flexibility is constrained in the near term while service expectations remain high. District is growing, with the majority of growth occurring in our key growth centers, and our demographics are changing, as mentioned, while service demands continue to increase. With this in mind, managing growth in the community remains a key financial planning principle, and staff are monitoring baseline service levels, and service level targets will be reassessed following the upcoming amendment to the OCP. And to address that question earlier from the public around growth and development, this financial plan assumes growth prior to all this new legislation. And so we'll need to update those assumptions following the OCP amendment in June. So that'll come later on this year. This is an important slide. It's a little bit complicated, but I'll do my best to explain it. It shows the full tax and utility bill for a median single-family home for 2025, so for last year. That's the last year this comparable information is available, and many municipalities use this information to compare what the total tax bill and utility bill is for their residents. So while the district's municipal taxes have been growing at a rate below the regional average, our rising utility charges for Metro Vancouver are expected to move us up on this chart by 2029. Other taxing authorities include TransLink, Metro Vancouver, and the province, which, when added to the municipal taxes and utility fees, bring the total bill for the median single-family home in the district for 2025 to $9,241. Now, just focusing on the municipal property tax portion of that total bill, over the past 10 years, the district's average property tax increase has been 3.8%, which is below the regional average of 4.6% for the municipalities in the chart. The goal remains to stay competitive regionally and to continue to deliver services the community needs while making modest reductions to services and increasing investment in our core infrastructure. That's looking forward based on direction from council. The financial plan, which is at the bottom of the chart here, it aligns with council priorities and the corporate plan. It's guided by principles, including sustainable service delivery, fairness in taxation, growth management, and financial prudence. On the right, in the bottom right, the 10-year rolling financial plan supports long-term service, funding, and affordability decisions. So it incorporates all the information from the strategic planning from the OCP down to council directions and related strategic plans and priorities reflected in the corporate plan. As of 2024, the 10-year fiscal imbalance in the 10-year rolling financial plan was estimated to exceed $350 million, and assumptions have changed since then. So the financial strategies supporting this 10-year plan and aim to bring it into balance are still evolving, and the lists, you can find the list of strategies on page 31 of the budget workbook. The next few slides highlight investments made in the community over this 5-year plan, starting with enhanced transportation and mobility through continued investments in active transportation and preparing for TransLink's Metrotown to North Shore bus rapid transit line. The plan addresses the housing crisis and community housing needs through partnerships for affordable housing, including East Keith Road, Lillooet Road, and Riverside Drive, along with additional provisions for further investments. The planning also includes resources to meet provincially legislated housing requirements and to streamline the development application process review, which often goes by the short name DAPR. To help achieve a balanced and fair economy, there are ongoing resources in the base budget to continue implementing the economic development strategy and to lead in climate emergency action and environmental management. There are resources to reduce climate-related risks, including hazard tree management, shoreline restoration, and wildfire and geohazard mitigation. There are also new investments in public electric vehicle charging infrastructure to support emissions reductions. And the investments on this slide reduce long-term financial and environmental risk. Foster community well-being, culture, and safety. The plan includes new artificial turf fields at Handsworth Secondary School, River Park, and the conversion of a gravel field. Park's infrastructure continues to be renewed, and there's increased funding to support the operation of new park assets, which have recently been added to the inventory. And improvements to our libraries, as well as critical planning for the expansion of or replacement of recreation centers in Lynn Valley and Seymour are included. Brand new Harry Jerome Community Recreation Center will open later this year, and this budget incorporates the district's share of operating costs for the new facility under the North Vancouver Recreation and Culture Shared Service Agreement between the city and the district. Fire services are also being enhanced with the construction of a new fire hall in the Lionsgate Lower Capilano area and the replacement of the ladder truck with a modern apparatus to better meet the community's needs. Whoops. And to foster a resilient organization, the Strategic Facilities Plan is advanced through this plan, which will focus investment on the highest priority buildings over the next 10 years. And there's continued investment in our digital transformation to improve customer service, public engagement, and service delivery. Section of the presentation will cover a brief overview of the 5-year financial plan, which balances affordability and our long-term sustainability, and infrastructure renewal remains a major focus. The 2026 municipal tax increase at 3.5% amounts to approximately $102 on the average single-family home. That average home is valued at just over $2 million through BC assessment. 1.5% of the increase is invested in asset renewal to address the infrastructure deficit, and target savings equivalent to a 4% tax increase were applied to keep the increase moderate. While the 2006 budget balances affordability through a low tax rate increase, modest reductions in services are unavoidable in this constrained fiscal environment. Changes to protective services, impacts from collective agreements, and increased costs to build and maintain infrastructure are some of the costs driving a potential tax rate increase of 7.5%. The adjustment strategies on this slide, generally supported by Council on February 3rd, were applied to achieve a 5 million reduction in the operating budget and a property tax increase of 3.5%. These adjustments are reflected in the municipal services section of the workbook, and on February 3rd, in that meeting, in those materials, attachment 1 had 2 pages, one highlighting the adjustments. So there's a verbal summary, and then there was line items in page 2 of that attachment that went into a little bit more detail. So if those aren't on the website, well, they are for that agenda day, but we can also make them available on the budget section of the website. On the capital plan, we took a slightly different approach when we moved this planning process forward to provide greater transparency on the capital demands. Staff first prepared the 5-year capital plan based on work that should be completed over the next 5 years following best practices. This resulted in a plan $107 million higher than the available funding. Staff then considered impacts on existing services and focused on adjustments in the outer years to bring the plan into balance. Some development-related work was also deferred pending a full reassessment of the impacts from growth on our infrastructure. Most of that $107 million variance relates to work on our facilities, which will be addressed through the strategic facilities plan. And to support addressing this imbalance, work on the 10-year rolling financial plan will be brought forward to the Finance and Audit Standing Committee in Q1 and Q2 of this year to address that fiscal imbalance and share the strategies that you find on page 31 on the workbook. Staff will also continue to monitor external funding opportunities, including any grants available through the federal budget, and updates will be brought forward to council as new information is received. Beyond 2026, municipal costs are projected to continue to rise above general inflation. The collective agreement patterns in the region are continue to trend higher, so continue to monitor that. And in addition to this, there have been several challenging years with police resources, and those resources will be right-sized over this 5-year plan. And we're seeing ongoing impacts from climate change, so we'll continue to address those and adapt the financial plan for the latest information. This plan's resources help to navigate these pressures while continuing to advance council's strategic priorities. That said, if council maintains a current approach of limiting tax increases to general inflation plus 1.5% for infrastructure, additional service reductions will likely be required. Our ability to borrow provides the municipality flexibility to meet future capital needs. We know we've already deferred projects beyond this 5-year plan. We know there's more significant investments in the outer 5 years of the 10-year plan. So having some flexibility to meet those future capital needs is important. Borrowing comes with debt servicing payments, which are represented here as a percentage of property tax revenue, shown in the blue line. Debt servicing in this plan peaks at 5.4% of property tax revenue in 2031, before declining to 4.1% in 2035. These debt levels remain well within the district's borrowing capacity, preserving flexibility beyond 2030 to address capital needs in the outer years of that 10-year plan. The district has been a leader in asset management since the early 2000s and has continued to strengthen its practices over time to better understand our asset renewal needs and support sustainable service delivery. Last year, the engineering teams brought forward and climate and parks teams brought forward a state of the assets report. It was the first report that we brought forward with that level of detail, and it did a good job supporting where we are with our finances, and a lot of that hard work is reflected in this plan. Past that update, staff continued to update the asset management information, and just over the year end, updated it again to ensure we're working with the best available information. So based on the most recent data, the replacement value of the district's assets has increased to approximately $4.6 billion, which is a doubling in value since 2020, which has also increased our target investment rate. It's important to explain the increases. It's primarily driven by rising construction costs, but also ongoing refinements to the asset inventory. and climate-related impacts on our infrastructure, including those that we experienced during the atmospheric river event in 2024. The State of the Assets report will provide a complete update on changing values, asset conditions, and the next steps in asset management planning in Q3 of this year. Council's direction to increase infrastructure funding while proceeding with modest service reductions aligns with public survey results that identified replacement of aging infrastructure as a community's most important project area through the public survey that was completed in the fall of 2024. Increasing infrastructure funding by 1.5% of the prior year's tax levy over the next 10 years brings annual funding to approximately 85% of the target investment rate by 2035. The remaining gap in that target investment rate will be addressed through the other strategies, again, that are listed on page 31 of the book. So as we navigate these challenging financial times, these indicators will help guide us toward a more sustainable financial future, along with, of course, the target service levels. So as we maintain competitive tax rates, we remain aligned with the economic development strategy, and we continue to support economic development. We still have a little bit of room to, a little bit of work to do there, and a little bit of room to move our tax rates in line with the region, especially with the light and industrial class. As we manage municipal tax increases, we protect affordability. Looking back over the last 10 years, the district's average tax increase has been below the regional average. As we preserve financial flexibility, we keep options open for future capital investments, and debt servicing in this plan is well below the 10% of property tax revenue. To ensure we're sustainable with our infrastructure funding, this plan sets a path forward to increase that funding to 85% of target levels by 2035, which is double the amount today. And we'll continue to monitor and improve information on our services and service levels to ensure we're able to support council in achieving its service vision and maximizing public value for money. There will be some hard choices ahead, but there is a path ahead for us to succeed. That concludes my presentation. Then the next steps include public input, which is already underway and remains open until March 2nd. We have a meeting with the community associations tomorrow evening, so we're looking forward to that. And staff will summarize all the public's input and council's input for the deliberations meeting scheduled for March 9th. And with that, I'll pass it back to Mayor Little.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daniluk. Just to get it on the floor, I'm going to move receipt. Is there a seconder for receipt? Second by Councillor Ma. Just my own comments on it. First of all, this is an initial introduction. I know we got it a couple of days ahead, but we usually create this period of time just to get it out there. And so if you have clarifying questions along the way or questions you want addressed, totally fine to address those. Probably best for your arguments on the budget for against the budget will probably be largely when we have council deliberations on the budget itself, which is, I think you had a date posted there.
March 9th.
March 9th. And so, but please don't hold your questions back until that time. It's best to address them along the way. My question would be, you did a really great job covering a lot of the residential impacts and costs. On the businesses, I saw the one slide that commented on what an average commercial business would be impacted, 300 and some odd bucks, I think it was. Averages are good, but I am kind of curious what the biggest taxpayer will get hit with as an increase. Do you have that kind of number at the ready, or is it something we'd have to dig up before future discussions?
We can certainly dig that up and bring it back. Yeah,
I'd be interested in that. I think I always like to see the bookends. You know what we're talking about as far as surprise impacts. I think into particularly some of our larger businesses on the North Shore and some of the challenges that they're facing. I was very glad to see in the financial discussions today nationally, they have projected it's a 2.3 CPI and expecting it to slowly taper off a little bit. I know that we don't have a direct same basket of goods as an average consumer. We're obviously a lot more heavy into steel and concrete and construction materials and labor contracts. But hopefully that pressure will be felt across the spectrum of services and materials we buy as well, because it reflects lower purchasing power of our dollars, and I know that municipalities are still seeing quite a bit of sticker shock on the contracts that come back from a labor perspective to build construction. So as a comparison, when I started in local government, it was about $200 to $250 a square foot for civil infrastructure construction, and now we're over $500 a square foot. And so it's quite expensive to go out to the marketplace and contract for building things, but that's where we're at. When we did our financial update in the fall, our pipes are in good shape, our roads are in good shape, but our facilities are going to be the future challenge. And all of those are at that highest end of contract for construction of public civic space at over $500 a square foot. And so that's definitely an ongoing concern for me. Glad you gave a bit of an update on the amount of debt and sort of what we're expecting to see over the next little bit. I would love to maybe even get into a little bit more information about what the future holds. You know, what does it look like 10 years out as far as our debt picture is concerned, particularly as we try to address that facilities piece within our longer term planning. You know, I will just say, I know a lot of people are concerned about what you raised here today, which was about the utility costs being handed to us. And seeing some of the longer term projections from Metro Vancouver, unfortunately, it's not getting better. The utility bills are getting higher, and as the growth projections moderate, but the capital investment doesn't moderate with the growth projections, you're going to be hit even higher in the long run. Hopefully, eventually, the moderate growth projections will lead to us right-sizing the utilities that we're producing for the region. I point to last week's population numbers that showed that the District of North Vancouver actually shrunk this last year by about 1,200 people. And the province of BC shrunk. And so we're still all basing our larger infrastructure dollars and commitments on some population numbers that I think are not actually going to come to pass unless something dramatically changes. Of course, the federal government could at any time change the non-biological growth of the country by using immigration tools and refugee services and other things. But it's a challenge and a risk out there for long-term planning for capital investment. So anyway, I'm supportive of this process unfolding. Look forward to the public's input on the matter and our future deliberations on March 9th. Councillor Ma.
Thank you. When I read through the financial plan, there's a lot going on, and I feel that generally speaking, the finance department used a sound and reasonable frameworks. So I want to thank the staff and all the other departments for getting the financial plan to this point. As with many complex items, we need some more details. And in this case, I know we cut about $5 million to get from 7.5 to 3.5. We know there's going to be reductions in service levels, and we just need to get that information. I know staff are working hard to get those plans and to come back with more details, so we'll wait for that. I also have to say, when I was reading through this work plan and looking at everything that we delivered to the residents of the district, you know, I feel we live in a great place. And, you know, people come and play and work here, but it's a great place. You know, it's amazing outdoor space, parks, great libraries, awesome museum, you know, well-used recreational services, both indoors and outdoors. And the challenge for us is to maintain that while being responsible with our finances. I do want to ask some more detailed questions under engineering services, there's almost $1 million. I think it's $980,000 reduction. And I realize there's some one-time costs or studies and strategic plans, but it also talk about divisional savings. Can you comment on that and what that might be?
Can I refer that to you?
Mr. Cohen.
Yeah, so through the mayor, what we identify for that is what we call bottom line management. And so looking at all the different consultancies that go out, whether it's work packaging that goes out for operating or capital, whatever the case may be, we try to find efficiencies throughout the year. And so that's our target number for us to hit under engineering services.
What impact will it have on the average citizen?
Yeah, so through the mayor, under engineering services, we look after effectively the long-term planning. So basically, it's just a slowdown of us being able to do our long-term planning exercises. So public works is the division that does kind of the boots on the ground, solid waste collection and the likes as well. But when it comes to things like a strategic transportation plan, long-term infrastructure plan, they're quite heavy investments on consultancies and the likes as well. And so typically what we would do in these types of circumstances, we would just slow down those exercises to meet the cash flow requirements that's set by the caps.
Okay, maybe this is a good segue. BRT is a key point of our mobility strategy for the district, and I know that your staff are working on some planning with TransLink. Maybe I missed it, but what is the budget for BRT in 2026?
So through the mayor, BRT is led by TransLink, and so the current investments from the district are just in-kind staff contributions. So there is no cost component to the district right now. For clarification, as it relates to bus rapid transit, TransLink's work's only funded up to what we call the 30% design. So that's a conceptual design. So the alignment has gone public with station locations, and we'll just gradually, TransLink, sorry, will gradually provide more details on what that service looks like, but it needs to go back to the Mayor's Council before detailed design and construction dollars can be associated with that project. For Council's awareness, there has and continues to be an allocation for what we call transit corridors, and Mr. Danlick can add more details to this, but we have been collecting money for potential growth on the transit corridor and the network we require for that, and that's potentially going towards any contributions that might be required from the district, but these are just allocations at this point in time for a very specific purpose for transit.
Okay. I just want to make sure that some of the things we're slowing down won't affect something that's as critical as. That's great. Thank you, Mr. Cohen. And this is alluding to what the mayor was saying. I just want to look at page 58. That's 6.37 in regional costs. Are these costs from Metro Van? And this is what the mayor was alluding to, that the costs just keep going up. Like that's
right.
It's over $6 million.
Yep. And it will continue to increase like that over the next through 2029 and before leveling off.
2029. I think we might want to discuss if we have any other strategies to deal with it. Okay. I was looking earlier on page 11. There's roughly 67.8 million in contributions to reserve. And when you look at the budget of 432 million, that's about a 15% to reserve. I just want to get a sense, is 15% kind of like a good practice, a good rule of thumb to have in reserve versus overall budget?
Sorry, which page is this?
Page 11. It outlines that the total budget for 2026 is about 432.8 million.
Yeah.
And you look at it's about 67.8 million contributions to reserve. So if I'm reading it right,
yeah,
that looks about 15% set for reserves, which I think is reasonable, but I just wanted to get.
I just based on my experience working in the region and with the province, when you're looking at municipal funding, which is largely infrastructure intensive, contributions in the range of 20 to 30 or even more is the more realistic target for where we should be.
Okay, so that's perfect. This is where I was leading to. Given our current economic situation, should our contribution to reserves potentially be higher?
We have modeled what, I mean, that's part of the sustainable infrastructure funding analysis. And yes, the contribution should absolutely be higher. And the way we look at this is it's a 10 years of bridge where we get to a target investment rate, as well as bring forward other strategies to recalibrate all that. So we are setting aside what we need to set aside. I think the reserve funds bylaw articulates exactly what we're setting aside for.
Right.
And we can continue to have good conversations about how those reserve contributions should be adjusted.
Right. So if hypothetically we burn through our reserves, what is our option? To borrow, or what would?
Over the next 5 years, we're definitely stretching some of the reserves, but there are still positive fund balances. So there's a page in the workbook on that.
Okay.
If the reserves were exhausted, they're not yet, but if they were, then you would go to borrowing. We're in the 5% range of property tax revenue, which is relatively low. So to make investments in 50, 60, 70-year assets, it's not bad practice to look at other ways like borrowing to deliver those investments.
Maybe if I can suggest, the reserves seems to be a big component. Maybe just consider a workshop in the future on this, just to give us a little. And I have one last question. There was a couple of times you mentioned for capital adjustments will be made in outer years. Notwithstanding that there's been a reduction in capital spending by about 107 million. If I may, thank you, or take my next 2 minutes. Sure, thank you. I just want to understand when we say adjustments will be made in outer years, is that, my words, pushing off projects that council has says, hey, we want to do X, and with the capital, you have your whole plan, or in a 5-year plan, but it's pushed to the outer years.
Mm-hmm.
Is it almost deferring it to the point where it might not get done? That's my concern. That I just want to be able to manage expectations.
Through the mayor, Councillor Ma, that's a very good question. The purpose of the 10-year rolling financial plan is to allow us to have a conversation where we correct that, where we have confidence in the next 10 years that we can deliver it. And my initial look at it tells me that it's possible, but there's some hard choices to make. You have if you go to page 33 and look at buildings, district owns 104 buildings worth over $1 billion. And there's things that we can do. But of those 104 buildings, 3/4 of the life of those buildings has been consumed. We do have some new buildings in service, but the majority need new investment.
Yeah.
So there are strategies. We have updated the development charges, which are now eligible for protective services buildings. We've updated the amenity cost charges to help with the recreation and culture and other buildings. So that's one way. There's also buildings that we need to reevaluate based on the public good, or whether or not we can get a better return on investment if they're more commercial type buildings where it's appropriate to get a market rate of return. So there's lots of things that we can do. And now is the time to be a little bit more bold over the next few years because we need to do something.
Right. I just think back when we were first, or the term of this council, it's about 3.5 years ago. And, maybe we were a little optimistic or hopeful, but there were some things that we said we wanted. And 3.5 years out, we were just starting now to realize some of them. So, I've been here the 3.5 years, so I know it's been tough financial times, but at the same time, we made decisions to have certain things in place, and they're not. So this is the hard part for me, to be able to go back to our residents and say, hey, we got to put off XYZ until, 3 more years, even though we approved it. So those are some of the things I struggle with.
So we can assist with that by being more transparent about what the 10-year plan looks like, what the options are, and working closely with you to bring about some change.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful, just to manage expectations, to say it's not been, dropped off the table. It's just because of certain realities, it's going to be deferred. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ma. Councillor Pope. Councillor Hanson? Yep. Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Danilek. Thank you and your staff for painstaking work in this project and all your efforts to keep the district's finances on track in the years ahead. I can say I do support the work of keeping our tax increases to inflation, or call it 2%, and 1.5% for infrastructure, or 3.5%. If that is challenging, and I appreciate it, it will be and is challenging. That's a challenge that I certainly support. A couple of questions. One of them pertains to growth within the tax base, and I looked at this chart here. It was debt servicing and the debt. And I was a little confused because the debt servicing comes down very nicely and yet the debt stays up. And then it occurred to me, implicit in that is the idea that our tax base is going to get larger. So my first question would be, what strategies do we have to monitor that risk in case that tax rate isn't increasing? And how can we accommodate if that scenario isn't unfolding as we hope that it will be?
Thank you for the question. The financial plan does include what we refer to as operating and risk management reserves. And so we have a number of reserves that can help with stabilization. The tax growth reserve is one of those reserves. So over the last 5 to 10 years, I think we've been experiencing growth in the rate of 1% or just around 1%. For this year, that amounts to just over $1.2 million. So that growth is there, and it compounds over years. Over the last 2 years, there was a bit of a blip where it comes back down, but on average, it's hitting that 1.2%. So to answer your question, if we hit another blip or 2 or 3, the tax growth reserve will allow us to stabilize over those periods. But in general, looking back and seeing what a great place this is to invest and a great place to live, looking at the projections from the community planning department, I think we can safely say that their growth will continue in the District of North Vancouver, and the financial plan reflects that. Now, the rate of growth is something that we need to look at. Of course, the market's changed, and maybe we make some adjustments in the near term. And so we'll be working with the community planning team on refreshing those forecasts after the OCP is updated in June.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Another idea in the outer years is that we're going to find additional funding sources, that some of our challenges are going to be offset by innovations with respect to additional funding sources. Can you comment on what those might be? You give some perspective on how that's going, and again, what's our strategy if that isn't materializing as we hope it will?
I can. So I'll refer you to page 31 of the workbook. All of those strategies in their current form are listed there, and we are putting more work into them. On the advocacy side, there's definitely work that can be done regionally, provincially, and federally, just to draw attention. So it's not, it hasn't resulted in any immediate new funding, but it does create a good dialogue and allows us to have good relationships and to foster longer term strategies on how the three levels of government work. So we'll see what happens with that. But I do think that it's effective. On the property tax side, we have brought up the issues with the Port Property Tax Act, and we are exploring that with a group of 10 municipalities, including ourselves, and the options that are available to us. And we have made some progress. There has been information agreements, information sharing agreements with BC Assessment that are underway, not signed yet, but there's work being done on that so we can demonstrate the inequity. And then there's also research being done on some of the decisions that have happened federally through the Payment in lieu of taxes program and how that might relate and influence the Port Property Tax Act decision. So that one could be a big one. And then the others, yes, we are focused on making sure growth pays for growth. So development finance, and there's some other tools in there now that we can explore. We have made increases to fees and charges, and above the tax increases that the municipality has been facing. So striking the right balance there, I think, is a focus, and we'll be bringing forward a user fee policy to help us with those discussions. We do continue to monitor grants. We can make adjustments to our service agreements. On the cost side, we definitely can look at our capital assets. We can look at extending asset life, which reduces the amount of set aside. So the buildings really only last 40 years or a little more, or should they last substantially longer given how they're being constructed today? And there's a few more in here, but probably the most impactful one in the remaining list is looking at consolidation of facilities and divestment. So we have $1 billion in facilities. We own 104 buildings. And do we need to keep them all based on the value that they're offering the public? So those are some of the ideas.
Yeah, thank you very much for those comments. And as I say, I absolutely support the work of your office to keep our district finances in good order. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Pope.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your work on the workbook. I do feel it's been clearer than previous years, and I very much appreciate that. And I also appreciate the efforts that's gone into making the website filled with more information that's easier for the public to understand, which has been really lacking in the past. So I very much appreciate you hearing council's repeated requests for that and making those changes this year. The financial plan represents some difficult but important realities. We've reduced capital spending by 107 million, with most projects moving forward, but some slowed or reduced in scope. I would appreciate clearer transparency on exactly which projects have been deferred and which have had their scope reduced, and exactly what residents will notice in terms of reduced service levels. Deferrals and delays cost money, obviously, and we have seen that with the deferral and delays on many projects, including the Handsworth artificial turf field, which has been delayed now for 7 years. And that's now costing a staggering 8 million, I think, is what it's at now. However, the most significant pressure facing taxpayers remains the North Shore wastewater treatment plant. By 2030, it's projected to reach, the sewer level is projected to reach 52.8 million, 183% increase over current levels. That is an extraordinary escalation, and it will directly impact residents' utility bills. The workbook states we continue to explore all avenues available re the significant cost overruns at Metro. Really? What are those? Because we've been talking about this for 2 years now, and I don't know of any new strategies. And in fact, a few years ago, I was laughed at by some members of this council for suggesting that we play hardball with Metrovan and refuse to pay the sewerage levy. I still think that the North Shore should join together in legal action to withhold payments at least until such time as an Auditor General gets in there and produces a thorough report. I have a motion coming up about that in a minute. But do you have some strategies that I have no knowledge of that are being worked on? Do we?
I can speak to one of the financial strategies, and maybe
Please.
I'll defer to the other matters. On the financial strategies, work very closely with the Metro Vancouver finance staff. And so their 10-year outlook is a welcome addition. They're working on that. They produced the first draft of that last year. We're asking for the sewerage areas to be broken out, so it's very clear and transparent what our rates look like as a North Shore sewerage area over the next 10 years. I've also asked for the debt payments and limits for each of the sewer areas to be published, because while Metro Vancouver maintains a debt limit in the range of 40% of ongoing revenue, the North Shore is substantially higher, and it deserves to be put out there for everybody to see. It's not good practice to have debt servicing that high, and I understand that's where we're at, but it's another way to just draw some attention to the matter about where we're really at. So we're working with them on that and financial policies, and we work with the Regional Finance Advisory Committee to make sure our work plan focuses on the materials going to Metro Vancouver's Performance and Audit Committee. And so we're hoping that lines up nicely over the course of the year, so we can have some say on what comes out of those meetings.
Providing more details on that. Now, in other matters in relation to the budget, before asking residents to absorb further increases, I feel we should be reviewing internal cost drivers just as rigorously. And that includes administrative overhead, discretionary spending, conference travel, vehicle fleet size. For example, whether car sharing or fleet reductions could lower operating costs. Every organization periodically reviews these areas, and in uncertain economic times, that scrutiny should intensify. On climate resilience, I appreciate the investments in wildfire mitigation and geohazard management. However, we know atmospheric river events are becoming more frequent and more intense. I don't see a clearly articulated contingency strategy with reserve funding for large-scale flood remediation. And I wonder if Mr. Cohen could address that.
Mr. Cohen.
So through the mayor, there isn't a specific line item that you'll find as it relates to responding to climate change. Anywhere that you'll see capital, particularly in our utilities program, as part of our standard work anyway, whenever we go and replace a pipe or a culvert, we'll already account for climate change. So that's already embedded into the costs that you see in those line items. On the contingency element, I actually wouldn't be able to speak to that. I might pass that question over the CFO in terms of reserves and contingencies for unplanned events. Just one final thing also to add is that one of the key strategies we had as the outcome of the atmospheric river event was to find short-term solutions that could generally fit within the budget through 2025 and 2026. We've been able to accommodate that. Anything larger scale will come back as discrete projects. There's nothing in this plan just yet that's specifically as it relates to the October 2024 item, because we're still working through those short-term solutions. Those larger investment ones start to get into the medium to long-term solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
I have a couple other
Mr. Daniluk.
thoughts. In restating the replacement value of the infrastructure through that asset management planning, so that was the discussion we had a little bit earlier. Definitely the drainage network, the replacement value of the drainage network has increased in value, and that reflects initial impacts of staff's assessment of climate change on that network. So that's one point. And I know there's more work to be done there, and that information is going to be brought forward through the State of the Assets report in July of this year. The other thing is when you look at the utility reserves of 5 and 10 years, they look reasonably healthy. But when you look at the age of the utility infrastructure, in particular the pipes, there is a spike coming in years 15 and 20 and beyond. And so we need to be setting aside funding for the replacement of that. So are the reserves healthy? Are they reflecting the impacts of climate change? We're working on that. And I think Mr. Cohen and his team and others are doing a great job making sure we have the best available information and bringing that forward to council.
Thank you. So I would like to see that in the budget, some sort of detailed clarity about how we're going to accommodate these huge increases in climate remediation. And on that note, I think that we should also be discussing revenue recovery. A number of municipalities across Canada have joined the Sue Big Oil effort to recover climate-related damages from major fossil fuel companies. We should consider whether signing on to that initiative is an appropriate or reasonable step to help offset future climate remediation costs borne by our taxpayers. And this budget is also about priorities. We continue to invest significantly in amenities, like spending millions last year on the Northlands golf course, washrooms and kitchen, while long identified community needs, such as a Lynn Valley Youth Center, remain unresolved despite repeated studies and confirmation of the need through public engagement, unresolved for more than 25 years. So is there $25,000 in the budget for a youth center to open this year in the next few months and finally give Lynn Valley what it needs and what it's asked for more than 25 years?
Through the mayor to Councillor
Before
Pope.
we get a response from you, I will just comment on $25,000 will not open a youth center in Lynn Valley. I think the last assessment was $400,000 was a minimum.
Yeah, that's not correct.
Okay.
That is not correct. Perhaps Ms.
We don't
Atva
have
would like to address that.
Miss Atva, what would $25,000 get us?
Thank you very much, Your Worship, to Councillor Pope. I believe Councillor Pope is referring to some additional funding that, for example, the Lynn Valley Services Society had requested through core grants. Lynn Valley Services Society has been supported by the district for a number of years to expand their capacity. They've done work in surveying and have identified youth programming as a need. They are currently working on proposals, working with NVRC, the North Shore Neighborhood House, to look at how to actually use some of that $268,000 that have been held in capital reserves that they've identified, or this group has identified a project potentially in Karen Magnuson Community Rec Center to use some of those monies. Staffing that proposal would likely be a youth coordinator who's supported now at Lynn Valley Services Society through a couple different financial means, as well as youth workers. So I believe that $25,000 would provide some support, but higher amounts I think will be needed to make that a good functioning youth center within that existing space, to retrofit it, to make sure that staff and VRC facilities are all on board. But the $25,000 could support that work to continue. There's currently a pilot project underway with the youth coordinator, funded by some other sources, Building Safer Communities Fund, for example. That particular position has a duration, so some additional funding would be needed for that to continue.
If I could address that, please, because I've done quite a bit of research on this, and I know, I think my facts are right, that we have the space, we have the room, it's there. The room exists, and we have a trained up youth program coordinator that could start in the room almost immediately for $25,000 a year. And that is the only barrier to opening up a temporary youth center. As far as retrofits and all of that goes, we have $268,000 that's been sitting in that fund for over 25 years. So let's just get on with it. It's these kinds of things that I think we have to ensure we are doing to live up to our responsibilities and include things like that in the budget and find ways to make it work, to provide basic services to our residents. And I guess I'm out of time, but I do have some other comments.
Mr. Daniluk?
I have nothing further to add
Right.
other than it's not, that initiative is not reflected in the budget, but I understand working with community planning and Ms. Atpa that there's reports coming back on that.
Thank you. Next speaker I have is Councillor Forbes.
Worship. A number of questions that I was going to go after have been answered, but I still have a few. And I won't go into great detail because we're going to do that the next meeting we get together.
I'm going to get you to go right into, if you can turn that microphone directly towards you. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me?
Much better.
I had just a couple of questions. Our 2026 to 2030 capital budget appears to be looking about 513.8 million. Is that
That's correct.
right? 281 roughly for new capital and 231 for existing capital. And it appears to be being funded mainly through reserves, developer contributions, grants, and 40 million in borrowing. What's our current what have we borrowed currently? I thought we were around 40 now.
We are, and so over the next 10 years, the net debt outstanding peaks just over 80 million in the outer years, and then comes back down.
Okay.
Sorry, we need to double check that. Because within 5 years, I thought it said 90 million, and then the second 5 years, it was quite a bit higher.
No, not at this stage.
Okay. Because we haven't committed.
We haven't gone through that process. Yeah.
There.
Having some trouble because I'm trying to figure out what's actually been built in here from things that we know from the provincial government and what isn't. The infrastructure levy increase is going from 1 to 1.5. After years ago, we promised the 1 was going to be gone after so many years, and we still need it. So that begs me to ask the question, we've gone up to 1.5. Where do you see that going and how long will that last? Like, do you see that within at the end of 5 years, you're going to have to up that again?
We've had discussions on this at that provincial level with UBCM and the folks at the province in the infrastructure division. All municipalities are grappling with these rising infrastructure costs. So they're introducing new requirements through their annual reporting to shine a light on it and to improve accuracy. They're connecting that reporting to grants or trying to. And in addition to that, they're looking at establishing unit pricing indexes by region to help the municipalities better understand how we're trending, because the unit pricing has really peaked over the last few years.
Okay.
And so we have to have more discussions about how we bring these prices down or how we strategize around the best path forward. So there's work being done at that level. So I don't have my crystal ball out about where it's going to go. I know we haven't been right in the past. We started, the former CFO, Andy Wardell, used to say it took us 30 years to get into this, or 30 to 50 years to get where we were in 2004 when we started this. And it's going to take us the same amount of time to get out. And so I hope it doesn't take that long. The current plan is to try to address this imbalance over the next 10 years. The 1.5% only gets you most of the way there, but we're going to have to work as an administrative team to bring forward ideas to reduce the other gaps in that. So we're making progress, but I can understand why it's frustrating.
Okay. Just looking at my questions here. So in the 10-year rolling financial plan, the 10-year fiscal imbalance is greater than 350 million in 2024 dollars.
When we looked at it, yeah, in 2024, that's what it was. So to do a proper estimate of that, we need to work with community planning and figure out what the growth forecast looks like, recalibrate, work with the engineering team and others, and re-estimate what that looks like. We can do that. I think we do a good job of that. But first thing is we have to update the OCP and confirm those growth forecasts.
That's what I was just going to say. So in other words, it won't be in this current budget. It's something that will be coming later in the year when everything else gets updated.
That's right.
Okay. Again, I had what specific service reductions are planned and how will residents be informed about those impacts? So I've heard the earlier discussion about how we'll deal with it, hopefully. But how do you plan on informing the public and timing of when you plan on informing them? Because if we inform them after we've withdrawn services, they're going to be a little upset. So I would like us to be able to say, this is what we're going to do.
Thank you for that question. There are materials on February 3rd that attachment 1 lays out describes the reductions and then lists them on page 2. But
with them, is there? Like, are those the ones we're going to do in this budget?
yes, those are the ones that are reflected in this budget. But I understand there's an interest in more detail and how and so we can work on that.
Yes, Mr. Fox.
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair, I think the discussion has to shift to we are working on bringing forward each general manager on the budget reductions and what the public can see and make sure council's good with that. Again, I'm hearing some other ideas that council has, and if you want to put that back into the budget, that is within council's mandate. You can shift the budget. By what I believe administration has done to this point is tried to meet council's goal of reducing the budget to 3.5%, with 1.5% of that going to asset management. But this budget is council's, and we've heard loud and clear tonight from several councillors that you want to understand where those reductions are and what that service level will be. So we'll get that information back to you as soon as possible. It will be at a council meeting, but we will also make it public as well. So making sure the council is fine with those reductions. Again, it's very, administration wants to bring forward the best information so council can own this budget and be able to explain it to the public where any increase in service or decrease in service lies.
Thank you. Whoops. I had a question. You mentioned Harry Jerome earlier. When it opens, the district will have our share of operating costs on that. Do you have any idea what's the timing on when Harry Jerome's going to open? And do you have any idea of what the range of the operating costs? And will those costs impact us this year?
We do have provisions in the budget for those operating costs. I believe they're in the range of $750,000. And it's a brand new facility. So you have to go through a year, 2, 3.
I understand that.
Of experience to figure out where that's going to settle. As an example, when the old William Griffin Community Recreation Center and the old Delbrook Recreation Center were consolidated, the experience was it was so popular that costs actually came down. So the subsidy required to operate that combined center was less than what it was previously. We don't expect that to happen here. It's a much larger facility, but it is expected to be very popular. So we'll see how it trends. For this year, we have $750,000 included for that provision. It's funded from tax growth, which was set aside for that purpose. And we'll see what the experience looks like. In terms of the timing, I believe it's mid-year, but we'll leave that to others to confirm.
You have enough on your plate. I'm just sorry. I have so many questions I had typed out here. Talked about the 85%. Can you answer that? I think you've answered most of what I had down. I did note, and I just need you to confirm that I didn't misread. The replacement value of D&B assets has doubled to 4.6 billion. Surely to God, if we can do some consolidation, we can get some savings out of that.
There's been a number of assets that we've identified to look at from that perspective.
Okay. I think, am I out of time?
You're into your second speaking time.
Okay, then I might as well try and finish this. The 1.5 million that was allocated for OCP and zoning updates, I dare ask this, was that the money that the province was giving us to do those things, or is this what it's going to come out of our budget?
I believe this is incremental funding from our budget, but Mr. Milburn might be better able. I think those initial funds were exhausted as of the end of this year. I think that is actually due this week.
Yeah. So there's another application for federal dollars, provincial dollars to UBCM as well. That's focused around the DAPR process, but we're also, of course, investing in updates to the zoning bylaw, which has a DAPR, or Development Application Process Review benefit. But in terms of the official community plan review and all the works that the province has indicated that we need to do for SMU and small scale multi-unit housing, that's sort of the high end of the estimate. And we're going through those dollars, and we have further dollars anticipated to spend in 2026. But that's in the range. Yep, there's additional dollars we're looking at spending in 2026. We have around $250,000 that we're looking at, primarily focused on the zoning bylaw work. Given that much of the OCP review occurred up to this point. This will be an ongoing cycle, though. Just to remind council, the province has indicated that OCP reviews will need to occur every 5 years, starting with the Housing Needs Report update in 2028. So we'll continue to see this in future budget cycles of OCP reviews.
Okay, thank you. Metro Vancouver wastewater costs. They're up 22% in 2026. Does that sound?
Sorry, I don't have that information.
But they will be up 183% by 2030.
Compared to 2025, yes. Compared to 2024, when costs change even higher, yes.
Numbers, but all the more reason we need to do something about Metro. Inflation and construction cost escalation continues to outpace our revenue growth. I've seen the examples of that you said that you would try to get more revenue in, but one of the factors you're including, if I understood you right when we had a conversation, was that the growth won't be as fast as what maybe the provincial government would like. So we should be able to stay on top of that a little better. It's not a cliff we're going to go off.
From my perspective, it all starts with Dan's office and what we're expecting in terms of trends. And on the infrastructure side, it's true, we're in a 5, 10, or maybe a 5-year peak. But when you go 10, 20, 30, or even longer, on infrastructure, and you compare it to CPI, they're very close over time. So I'm optimistic that those costs will come down over time, but there are a lot of demands on infrastructure spend in the next 5 years, and so we'll see what happens.
Well, in conclusion, I just say I think the budget and what we've done in the past has protected the short-term affordability, but at a cost of service reductions and reserves drawdowns coming forward. So we'll keep an eye on that. The infrastructure renewal remains 15%, hopefully only 15% underfunded. So I hope we look at that. And housing investments, we've grown those. I think that's me. Long-term fiscal sustainability remains a challenge, but I know you're on top of it. Thank you, and thank you to all your department and your staff for doing all this work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just some of my own comments. I think it's only natural that you, when you look through the comparisons between municipalities, and see how the heck does Port Coquitlam end up so low on the cost side of things compared to the rest of the municipalities. And we all individually have different levels of service for things. So as an example, between the city and the district, there's 14 rec facilities that are managed entirely between the two as a group. And we also, the district of North Vancouver has 5 fire halls, where Port Coquitlam has 2. We have 3 library branches where they have 1. We have, and our rec facilities, they have 3 community center spaces, and in the district of North Van City, as I said, 14 in total that we split the cost on. So it's hard to compare apples to oranges from such a simple line in there. We all have very different levels of service in our community and costs for public infrastructure. Hands down, our biggest increases that I think we ought to be very concerned about over the next few years is increased costs in emergency services, and also the engineering contracts. But emergency services is one that where we have a tough time to contain those costs, because so much of it comes from the RCMP contract and is effectively handed to us as well. But we have a new superintendent in place there, and we have commitments to work together to try to find cost savings and frankly also a better way of deploying police services within our jurisdiction that could help with what they call off-duty sick, which is where you're worried about the actual ongoing health of the officers themselves and how you can get a better bang for your buck supporting them properly so that they're back on the job reasonably quickly. So they're complex problems. I'm very glad that our staff have dug through these issues, and I look forward to the continued discussion on the matter. And I see no further speakers. So I'm prepared to call a question on the initial motion, which was for receipt. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. And we'll look forward to the public input between here and there. And as I said at the very beginning, don't save your questions for March 9th. If something is bugging you about it or you want to ask a question, please send it in the sooner the better. Okay. Council, we have the next item is item 3.2. I'm just going to note the time. We have a public hearing that has a posted start time of 7 o'clock. And if we run upon the 7 o'clock time, we will have to reconvene this meeting afterwards to wrap up this item. So hopefully it doesn't go that long. This is a council-generated report. And so I'm going to look to Councillor Pope for a motion, and I'll get a seconder, and then we'll put it on the floor for discussion. Councillor Pope, will you be moving the matter?
Thank you very much. I would like to move this motion asking the province to establish an Auditor General to provide independent oversight of Metro Vancouver with amendments.
We do note that you've made some small changes that the clerk has put in here, and so it's the motion is what's presented on the screen here,
which is essentially the same, except for it's removing the words. The significant part is that it removes the words Auditor General of local government to just Auditor General.
So, okay, great. And seconded by Councillor Hanson. Yes, thank you. Councillor Pope, your comments on the matter.
Thank you very much. Well, this is about one thing: protecting taxpayers. Taxpayers in the district and across the Lower Mainland are facing significant and escalating increases in utility bills due to mismanagement, ineffective governance, and massive cost overruns on the North Shore Wastewater Treatment Plant, which is now $3 billion over its original $700 million budget. Despite the scale complexity and financial risk of these projects, Metro Vancouver operates without independent oversight. Budgets are approved by Metro Vancouver's board of directors, yet Metro Vancouver and its board are not accountable to any independent authority and do not report to an external oversight body. An organization of this size, responsible for tens of billions of dollars in public infrastructure, requires independent arm's length oversight to ensure taxpayer dollars are spent responsibly, transparently, and effectively. And it's really important to understand the difference between an auditor, which Metrovan already has, and an auditor general. An auditor general provides so much more, including significant potential cost savings. They investigate why things were done the way they were done and suggest how it could be done more efficiently. They prove there's been value for money, something that is sorely lacking, to say the least, on the North Shore wastewater treatment plant. And I want to give you an example that was described to me by the former Auditor General for BC, Gordon Ruth, who also sent Council a letter of support for this motion yesterday. He said that, you might have 10 guys working on fixing a bridge. An auditor will simply look at the cost of the labor and whether it fell within the budget. An auditor general will investigate whether that bridge could have waited another 2 years for those repairs, whether the amount of labor used was actually required, and whether it might have been done by 2 guys instead of 10. It's definitely an oversimplification, but auditor generals have proven they can save taxpayers millions of dollars. And recently, the city of Vancouver learned that $6 million promised by developers to enhance the surrounding area of a project was never done. And that was by their own auditor general. An auditor general with a mandate to oversee Metro Vancouver would provide independent scrutiny, improve fiscal accountability, identify potential cost savings, and help restore the public trust in regional governance. Metrovan is simply too large, too financially significant, and too critical to our region's future to operate without independent oversight. So this is about transparency. It's about fiscal responsibility, and it is about standing up for the taxpayers we represent. So I ask Council to support this motion and send a clear message to the province. An Auditor General would go a long way to restoring public trust in Metro Vancouver, and it is the right thing to do. And my hope is that if Council supports this motion, that it will go on to be heard by the Lower Mainland Local Government Association at the upcoming AGM and conference, which can then be presented to the province.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hanson, your comments.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you to Councillor Pope for this motion and also for all her painstaking advocacy on this important issue over the last number of years. Councillor Pope said this has a single focus, and it's about protecting taxpayers, and that's, of course, an excellent focus. It's also about transparency. It's about informing taxpayers of what's really going on. And to date, we simply have not been given that kind of plain and simple explanation as to how $700 million became $3.8 billion. To date, there has been no independent review of the North Shore wastewater treatment plant. There's a lawsuit outstanding, which is being used as a shield by Metro Vancouver, in my view, as a vehicle to distraction and not to give us the information that we require. To date, astoundingly, from my point of view, the province has rejected calls for an independent review. So we're $3 billion over budget, yet so many questions remain outstanding with so few meaningful answers. The taxpayers deserve protection, as stated by Councillor Pope, and as further stated by her, they deserve transparency which means answers. I fully support this call for an Auditor General and look forward to being at LGLMA and supporting this motion in that venue as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just some comments on my own for this. So I used to be on the executive of the LMLGA, and I will just say that there are some ways that we can make the presentation a little bit punchier, something that specifically focuses on the action that you want out of it. And so I hope there's willingness on your part to maybe sit down and wordsmith the actual letter in motion that in line with the motion that's on here, so that we can make it so that when it comes to the LMLGA book, it says appoint an auditor for Metro Vancouver, a provincially appointed auditor, something just punchy, because I think the ensuring accountability and protecting taxpayers as a provincial auditor for Metro Vancouver even still could be a little tighter still, I think, because people, when they get their policy books, they tend to look at the titles, we'll say. I will also say, just wondering perhaps, Councillor Pope, if you could clarify, you've done a good job of clarifying the difference between a normal audit and what you'd anticipate from an Auditor General. Although, how would you see it as different from the independent review that we've asked for and been rejected on?
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, please.
The independent review that is currently on hold by Metro is not in fact independent at all. It was given its terms of reference by the Metrovan Board of Directors, and it's the Board of Directors, or it's the Metrovan Board of Directors that decided on its scope, and it reports back to Metrovan Board of Directors.
So just I mean, the one that council asked for. So the District North Bank Council unanimously supported your motion.
The public inquiry?
For a public inquiry into it. How would you see their an Auditor General's report as being different from the public inquiry? Yeah.
Well, very simply, a public inquiry is much more in depth and much more thorough, much more expensive, and takes much longer, which is possibly why the provincial government hasn't responded to it and hasn't moved forward with it. I would still very much like to see a public inquiry to get to the bottom of it. But I think that what's needed most at this moment in time is a few basic answers for taxpayers and protection for taxpayers on that project and others going forward. And I think the only way we're going to be able to get the province to do something is to ask for an Auditor General, which is easy enough for the province to appoint, and expand their current Auditor General roles and responsibilities to include that. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Thank you. I guess the one step further I might go, or the one thing I want to keep the door open for, is that I know in your whereas you've identified the North Shore wastewater treatment plant as being, obviously of most pressing concern to the North Shore. A performance audit of that project, followed by active management of the Iona project, because the Iona project, if it's split, will come in at about $6 billion on the front end, and then another phase later on.
Deferred.
And I think that, we might draw in a larger crowd from the LMLGA if we keep the door open to this position covering future major projects, including Iona. I think that's the intent. I just want to be clear before we craft something on it.
Yes, no, it's in here. It does mention in this report about the Iona and other projects that Metro is involved in, and the Auditor General would specifically have oversight of Metro Van, which implies, I think it's maybe it needs to be stated more specifically, explicitly, that it would cover all projects that Metrovan is working on. And by the way, for anyone else wondering, an Auditor General is very much independent from the government as well. Even though they would appoint it, that role is totally independent, doesn't report to government. It's kind of a quasi.
Who does it report to?
Yeah, that's a good, the public, basically, essentially the public.
It'd be the province's auditor of Metro Vancouver, and their reporting would go back to the province, or their reporting would go to the board of Metro Vancouver, or the reporting would be a public release.
Reporting would, this is a good question. I think I should get to the bottom of that before the next phase. Yeah. Because I'm assuming that the reporting would be to the public in general, because when you currently have, perhaps Mr. Fox knows, if the current Auditor General is auditing some other organization, I think the report has to be made public, and so therefore it is essentially reporting to the public.
Mr. Fox, additional comments?
Sure, thanks. And through the chair, I've only been involved in a couple of these. Usually there is a public document that is released about the audit. There may be other directions that are provided to a board or a council in an in-camera setting, depending on the findings. But the majority, I believe, are made public.
Okay.
And to your piece about this was a very rushed job because it had originally been intended for the February 23rd meeting, which was canceled. So my apologies to council for that, but definitely I think we can beef up the background a little bit and make it more of more broad appeal to LMLGA and it's the politicians that are part of that group.
Yeah, no, we were glad to put it on tonight's agenda, even on short notice because of the scheduling change.
Yeah.
And in order to be able to get it through to LMLGA before their cutoff. One other strategy we have to consider in this is that the Union of BC Municipalities has sent out some fairly strict comments about bringing forward issues that have been debated, discussed, and voted on in previous years. And I'm trying to recall the difference or distinction between this and what you called for from the floor last year in Victoria, which I think was that the independent.
It was an overview. It was
Yeah.
more broadly worded.
Okay. All right. Good. Well, I see. Oh, Councillor Mah, your comments, please.
I want to thank Councillor Pope for bringing this forward. I think we all, including this entire council, wants to know some answers on what went wrong with the North Shore wastewater treatment plant. When I saw this report on Friday, I looked into it, and I'm sure you know this. There was a news story done by Global News about a year ago, in January 2025, where the reporter actually interviewed the former Auditor General for local government, Gordon Roof, that you mentioned. And, we want to get to the bottom of this. We want transparency. One recommendation that he had was to expand the scope of the existing provincial auditor to give it a mandate to look at municipalities. At that time, a year ago, the province rejected that suggestion. And according to the report, it said the province was taking a wait and see approach. I don't have a problem going back to the province. I think a few things has happened, them holding off the independent review until after. And I think that came out mid last year. I thought that was kind of disingenuous, especially when they still went ahead and assigned a surplus to us to pay. I thought that was kind of unfair. So I hope the government listens this time. I will support this. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes.
Just a clarification in all the reading that I do, you can have the Auditor General for a particular municipality, and then you can have the Office of an Auditor General for municipalities of BC. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with a municipality having their own Auditor General position.
Vancouver
Vancouver
City
could.
has its own Auditor General.
Yeah.
We've never had that. We have
Oh.
obviously an independent audit done by KPMG this year.
I'm not so much concerned about that as in the words get mixed around depending on what you're reading. So do I understand that there used to be a position of Auditor General for municipalities, which meant all of the municipalities of BC?
Yes.
The way we worded this one, we're specifically asking for one for Metro Vancouver. Is that correct?
For the regional district, yes.
Yeah. Thank you. I just want to clarify that.
Okay, I see no further speakers. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Okay, council, we've completed the business of this evening's meeting. Are there any reports to be made? Seeing none, I will accept adjournment. Thank you from Councillor Ma. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a public hearing starting at 7 o'clock, so we'll have a bit of a leg stretch and break before that starts. But I do want to say thank you to staff for all of their work preparing the draft budget that we considered tonight, and look forward to working on that. Everybody have a great evening.